Okay, Marley, welcome back to the show. Really, this is the end of the year podcast for us. It seems like only a few weeks ago we did our first podcast here at Momentous Sports. It's obviously been half a year, if not longer, since we did that. And really, this is designed just to be a check in, talk about some of the highlights of 2025, both for ourselves, for Momentous, kind of recalibrate at the end of the year and discuss what we're thinking about going into 26. But to start it off here, obviously you're a father of three. Family is very important to you. I know you're energized by your family. What are you looking forward to in this holiday season as Christmas and other holidays approach?
Yeah, and thank you. I can't believe that we're talking about December. We've talked about December and the end of the year all year. I think it was like this far away thing, but as you know, the days don't exist here. And I
No.
can't believe we're here. But listen, man, the holiday season is interesting. I grew up, the holidays, honestly, just to be really blunt, was always kind of a challenging time for me. I had a great family, but we had a lot of challenges as a family growing up. And so while I loved the holidays, they always seemed to come with a lot of hurdles and obstacles. And that's just ingrained in me. So I'm always kind of looking around the corner a little bit when I get to the holidays. But to answer your question, with my kids and with my family, like, as you know, they're so important to me. I am so energized by my family and by my kids. They're at this kind of really cool age of 4, 5, and 8 years old. I'm about to have my 5 year old's about to be 6 on Friday. And I'm just really trying to soak up those moments. They have their Christmas program at school this Thursday, where both of the girls are getting up and they're so excited. They've been practicing since August, their songs and their different pieces. My oldest just led Christmas chapel for the entire school the other day and got to go and experience that. I'm glad that I was in town for that because I've been traveling so much. We've got a birthday this week, and then we have the holidays, and so just really trying to soak it up and see how special it is for them. I talked about this on the podcast with Nate Checketts a couple of weeks ago, but for me, I was really fortunate in a lot of ways at my prior career at FS. And one of the things that I took away was this dynamic of folks and executives that, some of them were incredibly intentional with being successful professionally, but then also always being there for their family and knowing that that was what grounded them and what was most important. And then I saw the flip side of that, of the people that forgot and they were just motivated by professional success. And so at an early age, I recognized that I didn't want to be the latter. I wanted to be really focused and intentional with my family. And so I just try to be there for all the events, and it gives me so much energy. I get a lot of energy from work. But I get so much energy just from soaking up those little moments with the kids and with the family. And so this is obviously a special time to be doing it. What about
Yeah,
you?
yeah, it is. I mean, I grew up in a similar situation. I come from a divorced family, and so the holidays for us children were hectic, jumping from home to home, and all types of different events to go to. And as I've gotten older, that's kind of stabilized. I think that's natural. But I'm at this very beautiful place in life with a 3.5 year old and a 14-week old, and this will be my third year here for Christmas in Germany, which is very different. It's basically celebrated on the 24th. Like it's contextually very different, but there's cold weather and a lot of novelty, great Christmas markets. And you really feel, obviously, growing up in Florida, we try to decorate for the holidays, and you see incredible neighborhoods with lights and just almost ridiculous amount of lights
Yeah.
and blow up things in the front yard. It's not the same here. But you really get kind of into the Christmas season. Maybe you felt that when you lived in Philly and it was cold and
Yeah.
you could really feel the seasons change. And I do enjoy that kind of seasonal element here, kind of turning the page that you just don't get really in a state like Florida. There's a lot of reasons to like Florida, but the seasons aren't one of them. So, I've been energized by the idea of what's to come, but I'm also similar to you, feeling like we're in a heavy sprint here towards the end of the year. A lot of things that are moving, a lot of exciting momentum in various areas. I know at Momentous, we've been really focused on building out the team, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I'd ask you in advance of getting to those really special moments here in the next few weeks, professionally with business, how are you thinking about ending the year? Are you turning in and thinking about the organization, the build out of the team, the growth of the team? Are you thinking about what's happening in the market? How are you trying to wrap up the year in preparation for an exciting and active 2026?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And back on the holiday thing, I hope to God that you have a Christmas tree in your German house.
We
Please,
don't have
please
one
tell.
yet.
You don't have one. You better go get one. Um,
We will.
Go chop them down somewhere. Go find a German
We
forest.
will.
Um, yeah, so it's really interesting. Like we've been so busy this year in so many good ways, and I always say how humbled we are about how busy we are, and I've really had to lean on some mentors and wise counsel here, really over the last 6 months as the velocity has just gone from 10 to 11 to overdrive, and in a variety of ways. We've really staffed up here at the end of the year, and we've brought on some amazing folks. But with any time that you're running really, really fast, and then you onboard, you have to make time to onboard those folks appropriately. And so we're a rather lean team, and so making sure that it's almost like you have to run so fast, and you were running so fast, but then you really have to be intentional about slowing down, which is against my grain,
Yeah.
in kind of my natural DNA, to make sure that you're spending time with the folks that you just onboarded. And then the same is true here in December. And I've always, been really reflective professionally and personally in December, I think, as a lot of people are. But to answer your question specifically, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time really just, kind of reflecting on the year, looking forward to next year, but using this month where it's an entire month that we could be busy on a variety of different things, and we are very busy, but really just really kind of taking that time to clean out the closets. Like I just did it this weekend here at the house. Like I went through some people do it more toward the end of the year, maybe in spring, but like literally I've got so much crap in my closet that
Yeah.
I just took the weekend. I was like, let me just cleanse. Let's start with a really clean slate, and that feels good. That feels invigorating. It feels refreshing. And so inward looking, kind of backward looking, and then forward looking at the same time. Understanding kind of where we have been, where we are, and where we're going, making those small tweaks that make big differences. And so yeah, a lot of strategic planning about 2026 across all the platforms and Momentous, and just excited about everything, but really making sure that we start the year, because you're just running.
Yeah.
Like at some point you have to like calibrate and clean the system and make sure that you're prepared to keep running as fast as you have been, and even accelerate at a higher pace. And so that's really where I'm trying to focus here in December as much as possible.
You said something there, um, where we've been. And so let's reflect a little bit on 25. This has been, an incredible year for us as an organization. Not just a lot of hard work put in, but a lot of building blocks, a lot of relationships that were intentionally organically built over the last handful of years, where those led to something bigger in 2025. A few highlights that come to mind for me. Number one, to your point just a minute ago, the build out of the team. I think we've added some exceptional people to Momentous Sports, who bring a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and some diversity in the way that they see the world. That is super additive to the organization as a whole, and how we're operating. We made another investment into Sporting JAX, which is something we're very excited about. You're wearing the merch today, the scarf. I do love the scarf. It's probably
I
a little
wish
more
I
appropriate over
wish that I
here.
looked better. I'm not a very good model, but yes, I could wear it.
It's funny when Americans wear scarves for sports. I think the trend is catching on, but everybody has them over here. But that was a second investment. I think that shows our excitement around that project. What's to come there? We'll kind of double click there in a second, and then this September we launched Momentous Sports, the brand and platform, publicly. I think it was from where we sit, incredible type of response from the market. We appreciate our partners over at Athletiverse working with us to get that launch out. But just why don't you take me back, to Sporting JAX, the additional investment there, and why we did that, and what we've continued to see as it relates to that platform, and then as it relates to kind of soccer here in the U.S. and some of the macro tailwinds that are taking place in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a crazy year, like we started with here at the beginning of the conversation. I think so many good things. You talked about our partners, and we
Yeah.
spent time. We spend time all the time with our partners, but really, I was down in Miami with Bobby Hennebury, who's CIO for John Elway, and he is ingrained, and John are ingrained in a huge way. I'm on the phone all the time with Four Stones. We're talking to them this morning. Our partners, Four Stones partner with Andrew Cathy and some others, and so again, we go back to this discussion point about surrounding ourselves with really wise counsel and great partners, and partners that are very activated and engaged with us. And so I'm just so humbled and excited about next year, that we're all rowing in the same direction, and we're all really excited about where we're going. So we've got some great people around us that we can talk more about. Sporting JAX, I think they're number one, maybe number two in the league right now on the women's side. They're absolutely crushing it on the pitch. There's so many exciting things happening. We made our second investment with them this year. They've got, such momentum in the Jacksonville market. They're led by, Ricky Kaplan and Tim Tebow and Steve Livingstone and the whole crew up there, deeply connected in the Jacksonville market, have a great real estate project that we've been working on, with them. The women's team is crushing it. The academy is one of the largest in the Southeast and continues to bolster the entire foundation. The league itself, we just got the notes from Amanda and the league itself. Some amazing things happening at the league level, at the USL league level, at the women's league level, women's soccer in total. My kids are fanatical about Jacksonville and women's soccer. My two oldest daughters, who didn't have any exposure to that before, Sporting JAX this season. So I'm really excited about not, Sporting JAX obviously, but just about the pipeline that we have and the totality of what's happening in women's sports and soccer here in the U.S. There's obviously a lot to talk about that
Yeah.
specifically. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you point to the World Cup coming. That's going to be a force multiplier for U.S. soccer here. I think it creates this really exciting anticipation for next year, for North America, really, with the World Cup coming. And I think that where our focus is in that middle market of sport, everything that's happening at the World Cup level, the global level, will continue to be super super additive to the growth of the USL, the Super League. I think it will lift, all ships here as it relates to a focus and a re-energization, maybe is the right word. That's probably not the right word. With soccer in the U.S. And, I think when I've watched the Super League, it's been extremely competitive. It's exciting games. It's incredible framework and platform. I think like any emerging league and new league, there's going to be natural areas of growth. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be friction. And I think the USL and the Super League are led by individuals who are able to work through those challenges. And to your point, I think when you look at, the Women's World Cup in 2031, and just where a lot of the trends are. Obviously, the NWSL has done a fantastic job of carrying the flag for women's soccer here in the U.S. I think the Super League is trending right behind them. Obviously, the NWSL has a 6 or 7 year kind of head start there. But I'm overall excited about the space. I think we've seen incredible projects this year with the pairing of what we look for. Emerging teams or existing teams playing in third-party stadiums, high caliber type of operators who are just looking for a home to kind of plant the flag within these premium secondary markets and communities across the country. And so I'm, when I look at our pipeline and the opportunities that we've seen and the hard work that's been going into building this league and then the individual assets and properties within the league, you've seen an evolution of the ownership caliber and quality in the USL. And I'm excited to be a part of that. Let's talk real quick here about the launch of the platform in September. We obviously wanted to get the word out that we are in the market. We weren't able to identify, internally somebody that was pursuing investing in minority positions in the teams and stadium and mixed use real estate development kind of thematically when we were sitting as a family office through that middle market of sports. And, we made a decision I remember talking to you last October, walking down the street in New York City, talking about Momentous and talking about the asset class of sports. And really, the question at that point in time, that's 14 months ago, was, is sports an asset class, right? Is this something that significant institutional type of groups and firms are going to be pursuing and getting engaged with and activated in and investing in ultimately? Um, and so before we get to the launch, maybe we just reflect on that conversation in a sense of how are you're very good at looking at the market and understanding where trends are and where they're going. How has the asset class of sports this year, um, what's your perception of how it showed up, where it's going? Is it an asset class at this point in time? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's an interesting parallel because it's similar to my experience in data centers and digital infrastructure, where we were kind of at the forefront of that in a lot of ways, and then all of a sudden, overnight, in a relative fashion, it became white hot. And so there's a bit of a delicate balance there of being in an industry that is nascent and has a lot of opportunity in front of it, but then in a very quick fashion, a lot of attention and capital is chasing. And so we're at that paradox and at that intersection right now in sports. And so, if we would have flipped the page really almost 2 years ago when we are really talking about this in a meaningful way to where we are today, you go from a couple people are talking about it, thinking about it, it's getting a little bit of attention to, KKR just is merging with Arctos, like happened pretty quick, even though it's been a year and a half to 2 years. And so, um, you know, how that lands with me is that I believe we have a tremendous amount of opportunity. I believe that we were somewhat bright and intellectual with our intention, but also like with life, a little bit lucky that we continue to focus on where I think the most upside is, and that's the middle market of sports wrapped with real estate. And we still continue to be really the only folks there. And I try to humble myself all the time when we're talking with, quote unquote competitors, which are really just, potential partners in my mind, and everyone in the market. And we're really the only people focusing on that middle market, great secondary markets, with the real estate wrapping. And so I continue to have a great degree of conviction, but I do recognize that, especially in the top four leagues right now, things are getting a little bit crazy. And so I think that there's still a lot of room to run. There is more capital piling in every day, and they're not making any more teams. And so I think it's going to ultimately benefit the middle market the most, and where we're sitting. But sports as an asset class is a thing now. It absolutely is a thing. You've got the top, most, um, you know, intellectual and capable folks on Wall Street that are either acquiring like Arctos or merging or developing their own sleeves. And at the end of the day, I think that's good for the industry. I think it's going to change the paradox of sports. We haven't even touched on collegiate sports yet, which I know we will here in a little bit. I think we are really at that interesting intersection of not disruption, because I don't really like that word, but like sports is changing, and how my grandfather and your grandfather played and participated and watched sports versus how we did, and kind of the advent of fantasy football and how that changed things, to now gambling and betting, and then the entire change and disruption of new sports, how we watch them, how we engage with them, how they're, now people, institutional folks and investors like us and Arctos and KKR now care about the profitability. So, if I could zoom out in 10 years, I think the landscape of sports is vastly different than it is today. And there's going to be good and bad with that, depending upon which lane you're in, whether you're just a spectator and a, avid fan, or if you're an investor or otherwise. But it absolutely is an asset class. But I continue to have just a huge degree of conviction, because while all of that is happening, and there's some, nobody has a crystal ball on how all that ends up. I do know at the end of the day that people want to engage and go to live events and to go to the actual games and to participate there, and that people still need places to live and places to shop and places to experience the game. And so, again, for me, I'm so excited about sport as the catalyst, But the more risk averse side of me says by wrapping it in the real estate that we are, that is a huge insulator and diversifier in a very meaningful way. And so while sports can go this way, this way, this way, and be disrupted, we're still going to have a very viable model where the asset class, the anchor, the hard asset of the real estate is a great insulator, regardless of what happens.
Obviously, I agree. It's what we're doing
You don't have
together.
to.
I think one of the things that has been noticeable for me this year, I obviously sit in an interesting seat being here in Berlin, Germany, and in touch with the European market and kind of having my ear to the ground over here. And it's been amazing to see, there was American capital and even institutional capital from the US coming into the Premier League, into the championship of the English Football League, really those premium assets, right? Really playing against the scarcity factor, the media dollars that exist there. And over the course of the last 12 months, you've really seen a lot of groups, whether that be independent sponsors, whether that be, firms or funds, really thinking about the globalization of sport, taking some of the things that have been successful in the US and trying to get what in many ways outside of the handful of well operated leagues at the high level and clubs, the next evolution, remove some of the archaic infrastructure that exists over here in Europe, especially related to soccer or football. But people really thinking about, okay, how do we continue to do what's in the US, but start thinking about that on a global level, whether that be here towards Europe or south through Latin America, up to Canada, and even to the MENA region, the Middle East, obviously, which is hyperactive, and to Asia ultimately. And so I think for me this year, it's a lot of the conversations we had for a long time were US related, and you're starting to see that push to grow from an asset class perspective, here to Europe and beyond. And so for me, obviously, selfishly being over here, that's really exciting, even just from a spectator perspective, right? And thinking about what am I going to take my kids to in the future? How am I going to get them involved in sports? What is youth sports going to look like in the future? And so
How
I think
about a
that's
little American basketball and football over in Europe? You think he'll be
American.
doing that? So Noah is 14 weeks old, you said?
No, it's yeah, I think so. Around there.
So he'll, in 5 years, let's assume that you still live in Berlin, Germany, that, he'll be at that age where he's starting T-ball, which maybe not even a thing in Germany, but, football and all those other things. Do you think that in 5 years, outside of your American connection, that in Germany, he'll have a base of, the ability to participate in like American football or American basketball on a very different way than is available today?
Yeah, I absolutely think that. It's a really good question. I think about it often, and I'm, trying to build relationships for the work that we do that also give me further education on how I should be thinking about that for him and Lily. And first and foremost, one of the things that initially comes to mind is flag football, right? Flag football is going to be a part of the Olympics, both for boys and girls, men and women. And I know that the NFL is investing heavily here in Europe from an international level to lift exposure to the game through flag football. So that's exciting for Noah and Lily for me, and I think that I have some of the right relationships to plug in there right away. I think the American football system over here is an interesting evolution currently. I think the youth sports generally is very old, is very much the club system. Get into a club system, if you're going pro by 15 or 16 years old. There's no high school sports, there's no college sports. Talk about an opportunity. Somebody could figure out how to turn on collegiate sports in Europe. You know, it's very nascent in that regard. And so I think the NBA Europe expansion, or proposed expansion, will continue to bring exposure to the game of basketball even more than it is right now. So I'm keeping my ear to the ground. I'm trying to figure out what that looks like and how to be the best parent I can to get him and her involved where it makes sense. But I'm also thinking about kind of like the foundational skills. So I think of gymnastics, right? And just building body control and, coordination and those types of things, in the 4, 5, 6, 7 years old range. I'm not sure that I would put my son, and this is maybe a controversial statement, into tackle football or contact football before the age of 12 or 13 years old based on my work at Nestry and knowing, what happens at the brain level and strength of neck and all these various things that it should go into consideration. And that's why I like the flag football component at an early age. But I'm excited to see where that goes. And I think, this is just me sitting in this seat, qualitatively, like if you can, youth sports in the US is very much big business, obviously, and we see people investing in it in an incredible pace. How you unlock something similar to the US infrastructure as it relates to youth sports over here, you're up against a lot of history in doing that. But if you can figure out how to do it, I think parents today, with the advent of social media and the global connectivity, see what's happening in other places and are looking for various outlets to plug their children into. And I'm going to keep watching that as well. So, a lot of excitement generally. And I know that we wanted to keep this, fairly short, as far as this pod is concerned. But let me just go back real quick. It was interesting during the launch of Momentous. Obviously, we got incredible coverage. We appreciate all the people that, gave us that coverage and gave us a platform and help us launch the brand. It was an interesting transition for us as a family office where we are entrepreneurial, we are relationship driven, and we were out in the market a lot as a family office and very active. But you're not, marketing, you're not doing PR launches, those types of things typically in the family office space, 99% of the time. I'm just curious how that experience was for you. Was it more than you anticipated? I know the inbound for us, and thank you for everybody that's reached out over the last 3 months, was significant in multiple directions. When you look back on how that went now, 2 or 3 months later, what comes to mind, when you reflect on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're exactly right. I mean, we like to stay behind the curtain in a lot of ways. That's just my natural inclination anyway. So that was not uncomfortable, but atypical from what we typically do. But I think what has been deeply humbling and gratifying is just the amount of organic interest that we had. And I know I said this a couple times, but I mean, hundreds of people just reaching out saying, hey, I want to work with you, like literally come work here. Municipalities saying, hey, come do projects here. Investors coming to us and saying, hey, we have a high degree of interest in investing with you guys, developers, everything in between. And so I joke about it, but it's the truth. Like I'm normally an inbox 0 or 10 type of guy. And it was just like hundreds and close to thousands there for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I just couldn't get out of the flow of that. And that was across the entire organization. We've got to a better place now. But yeah, I mean, the amount of attention that we received was super gratifying to know that we were working on something and saw something that deeply resonated with so many different pieces of the profiles across the industry, across sports and real estate. And so, yeah, you talk about the transition from, typical just family office kind of investing to now we've got a platform that is out there raising capital. And so that's a bit of a transition, but one that I've got, and the team has a deep background in. And so that, has been a bit of a transition, but not anything that we're uncomfortable with or not prepared for. And so I'm just excited about where we are in 2026 as, we're having incredible conversations with anchor investors and institutions and RIAs and other family offices that deeply resonate with this. We have a pipeline that was just ridiculous, to be honest, in terms of the amount of things that were in the pipeline. And
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
we're in a really good, interesting spot as we step into 26. How do you feel?
Good question. I mean, the launch was overwhelming. I was also humbled. I don't know that you're ever prepared for all of a sudden you to show up or your company to show up in 70 different publications. Again, very humbling for that to happen. And to see we saw a lot of great opportunities over the last 2 years. To see that even, multiplied gave me conviction. You always think about as an investor TAM, right? Like, where's the market going? What's addressable? How many opportunities are actually out there? especially when you talk about sports and real estate. And it became very evident to me that the market was extremely active, looking for capital, growth capital, the right partners, subject matter expert partners, value add partners. And I think I have been taken back by, there's a lot of emergence of various types of capital moving into the space, whether that be private credit, different various debt vehicles, et cetera. There's everybody has their angle. What I've sensed and how I try to show up to every call is, even if in a case where somebody could be competitive, to your point earlier, I've felt a sense of collaboration from just about everybody that I've spoken to, right? You're going to have exit partners in the future. There's going to be various joint ventures, SPVs, a number of ways to participate and blend capital where skill sets cross and value is added ultimately to create a better experience on the ground and better returns for investors. And I think that is the sense of what I got based on the outreach from the brand launch. Was there's a lot of creative, unique people out there that want to do incredible things for communities together. And that was kind of a warm and fuzzy feeling, but it's also energizing and invigorating knowing that you're hunting in the right spot and that there's a significant amount of opportunity ahead of us. And so, if nothing else, it kind of left that impression on me, and that's a great way, I think, or a great feeling to have rolling into the holiday season and then picking the ball back up, sprinting into next year. We're going to have a show where we really talk about trends going into the year coming into 2026. So I won't go that direction here, but let's kind of close this out. And I want to reflect, it's been a few weeks now since Thanksgiving, but you sent out an email to our network really with a kind of a heartfelt articulation of just how you were ending the Thanksgiving season and what was on your mind. And honestly, I was on a flight back from Boston to Orlando, and I sent you a text, and I'm not even sure if you really, really knew how to respond to me. I was like, hey, man, I got a tear rolling down my eye. And obviously, I had been away from my family for 2 weeks when I read this. So that's a little added context. But I think the response from everybody who read it was very similar, that it was just a great reminder of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so a lot of it was correlated with your podcast with Nate Checketts. And so I just want to read two kind of excerpts here, and just get your thoughts and maybe generally what was on your mind when you put that together. You said there was a line in the podcast that you and Nate talked about, and it said, quote, "I'm a work in progress and I'm okay with the messy middle." And, to me, that feels like something every founder, every parent, every executive like needed to hear, that it was okay to be okay with that messy middle. How does that kind of show up in your life right now? Or what does that mean to you?
I think as you say that, for me, it means being vulnerable and leaning on wise counsel and being your authentic self. Again, I was surrounded with great executives at FS in the formative years of my career. There was a culture there that everything is great and everything is perfect. And people see through that. And so, you know, life is hard. I don't care if it's on the personal side, the professional side, or otherwise. And so we're all going through things, good and bad. And if we're going through bad, there's good on the horizon. And if you're going through good, there might unfortunately be some bad on the horizon. But just surrounding yourself with great people that care, great partners that care about what we're doing, great staff and colleagues that care and that we care about their personal life and their professional life. And so, yeah, I mean, the messy middle, I think, is probably infinite.
Yeah.
We never have everything figured out. And so there are always going to be challenges. And it's about surrounding yourself with great people that can lock arms with and trust in. And that's hard. And
Yeah.
so I don't have any other response other than
Yeah.
just saying like vulnerability and authenticity is awesome. And one of our best partners, Bobby Hennery with John Elway's family office, like he is the epitome of that. Like we have some conversations. I was with him in Miami and his friend Mateus, and like we just had like the most vulnerable discussion about life and business and everything. It just feels so good. Like I
It
would
does.
encourage people to just do that. Like
Yeah.
have hard, interesting, deep conversations. It is so relieving and refreshing.
Especially as men, right? And especially in a world of finance where, the thought may be very buttoned up, fiduciary responsibility all the time, and people, in various environments don't let their guard down. I think that's what we've tried to maybe get across here on the podcast, in this forum of just the reality, the human beings kind of behind the work that we're doing, the space that we're doing the work in. Um, and I feel like that messy middle for me is it is the acceptance that everything's not always going to be clear, but if you can show up every day, if you can stack wins, if you can keep moving forward and making progress, whatever that progress looks like, that you can continue to work through that. And so I appreciated you, bringing that up and Nate discussing that, because for me, as you're building and as you're growing, um, especially the team, like it can feel like there's this kind of hurricane of information and progress and friction, and that's okay. That's where a lot of incredible opportunities come from and great ideas come from. And so that's how it landed for me. You talked about vulnerability there for a second. I think that you've shown some vulnerability in kind of expressing to people in various, you know, publications or in podcasts that you protect the 4:30 to 7:30 time slot, on a day-to-day basis for your kids and for your family. And for somebody that, and I know very well, is as, I don't even like the word busy, but is as active and activated as you are in the market, whether that be, on calls, strategy sessions, internal planning, like just number of things, you haven't wavered from that commitment that you made and that we know is just built into how we operate. Um, how has it changed your energy? How, like, you've been doing that, I think, since we've been working to maybe a year and a half now, really every day. Like, how's that landed? How do you feel? A lot of executives would have constant anxiety, knowing that they're kind of turning off, for a portion of the day. So how have you handled that? Would you advise that others do it? What's your thought?
Everyone's different. Again, for me, my kids, happen to go to bed at a relatively early time, around 7 o'clock. And so they're in school all day. And when else am I going to see them? And so, again, like we strive to be as successful as possible here professionally, obviously, and good stewards of capital and great fiduciaries of capital.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, what we're all here for is to me, to impact the lives of our family and those around us in a very positive way. And, I'm here for my family. And so if I forget about them and leave them to the side, what am I doing? And so, yes, I'm very intentional. It's been a sprint here in the Labor Day to Thanksgiving to, holiday time period in terms of I've been on the road a lot. You've sacrificed and been on the road a lot away from your family. And so that pains me, but I'm at a professional point in my life where I know how to hop in and hop out of certain geographies to get back and to change my train or my flight up a little bit so I can make sure I tuck in my kids or give them a kiss on the forehead at 8 o'clock right after they go to bed and they know that daddy's home. And so those things are meaningful to me, and there's sacrifices with that. But as you know, then I get back into the office or back on the laptop, and I'm active in the late hours and making sure that I'm intentional with my wife as well, Amanda. So yeah, I mean, again, it's just been a season of life, really, probably over the last 3, 4, 5 years for me, where I've been really reflective of trying to be militant's not the right word, but just really purposeful with time, intentional with every meeting, intentional with where I'm at and where I'm going, and what I'm doing with my family versus my wife versus my businesses versus my colleagues versus everything. And I'm in the middle. Like I don't have all the answers. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I get energy from my family and I get energy from work. And so if I can, you know, appropriately position those within my day to where I can extract as much energy selfishly from those things, but also give to those things as best as possible, that's where I think I'll be the most successful. And so that's where I've landed.
Well, I appreciate you setting the tone and the expectation for our organization. Obviously, we all kind of do everything that's needed while still trying to pair and place our families first, and that tone is set by you. So as a part of the team, I know the rest of the team is appreciative of you of setting those expectations. Both with the work life and the personal life, and I think that for me it's a fresh breath of air in many ways. And I happen to be in the executive coaching world for a period of time, working with Fortune 500 CEOs who really, really found a hard time to make that work. And in fact, often they just couldn't. And you've kind of set that expectation here from the start, which has been fantastic. I said we wouldn't look into next year. Let's wrap on this though. Um, is there a trend that is in the back of your mind that you're thinking about? There was something released yesterday about collegiate sports and private equity moving in there. Obviously, we talked on the outset about some of the very, very big players in the private equity space, moving in a more meaningful way with Arctos, et cetera. Women's sports is top of mind as a trending topic. Like, what is in the back of your mind that maybe you read a little bit more about over the holidays? It doesn't have to be any of those examples that you're thinking about, or positioning towards, or just tracking closely going into 26.
I think it would foolishly be unwise of me not to mention college sports. Obviously, we've got a handful of irons in the fire there, a lot of deep connections. I've been very public about our stance on that in terms of being very diligent and methodical about that, and kind of letting that play out, and not necessarily being a first mover, but recognizing velocity will happen very quickly. So I think we'll continue to pay a very close attention there, and it'll just, my friction there is recognizing that landscape is changing tremendously.
Yeah,
And my intention with Momentous as an investor, as a person, is not necessarily to completely disrupt something that is so special and important to people, which I think private equity gets the branding of a lot, right? Like, private equity comes in, you have to make money. That's, that across all industries, and like there's a stain, there's a cloak to that people
yeah,
don't like, and I don't want to be in that. I've been very vocal about how we're different, and so there's an internal friction for me as we look at what's happening there, and we hear about the options in collegiate sports, and recognizing that there's so much going on from, like, these young men and women, 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, now making millions of dollars, which I don't personally have, a deep perspective on one way or another. But then the entire education system and those
yeah,
colleges being so reliant on the athletics department, and now money coming into those athletic departments, and how that changes the conferences, and how that changes the entire landscape of college
yeah,
sports, everything is deeply interesting as a thought experiment.
yeah,
And I want to be involved there as an investor for the upside, but I want to be very grounded in recognizing that there's a big piece of the population that likes it the way it's been. And there's, I was very close with both of my grandfathers, and there's a nostalgic piece of me that, regardless of the investment standpoint, wants to always do what my perspective of the right thing is. So sometimes that'll be not taking a stance in something for an investment reason that just doesn't feel right.
yeah,
So there's a bit of a messy middle for you. So, college sports for sure, women's sports. It is so awesome to have, young girls and them be fanatical about a sport, and watching women's sports and knowing the players and participating. Like, I didn't see that in my
yeah.
future a number of years ago, and that's the case right now. So women's sports, I am all in on seeing that continue to be a huge success. And then, selfishly, and this isn't self promoting, but like, just the real estate opportunity is vast. And again, partnering with these communities, these municipalities, these team owners, and literally changing the arc of some of these communities and where people can meet and spectate and enjoy family and enjoy friends and do things. Like that's what we're doing it for. And I continue to be, I just know the amount of opportunity there. And it's so exciting to have a small but meaningful piece of that. So we continue to just be excited about the evolution of what that means.
I totally agree. I think those are the things that are top of mind. For me, I would say that I'm a college football or college sports traditionalist. Grandfather, big Alabama fan back there with when Bear Bryant was coaching. I also recognize where the sport's going, and things do change, right? And ultimately, I've always thought through the lens of, yes, through investment, there's a return orientation, but it also, if you're doing the return orientation the right way, if you're really lifting with capital the overall experience of everybody involved, then it serves as, perhaps a really incredible experience. I mean, think about let's use college football, for example, and we will wrap here. There's a whole bottom chunk, I don't know, third, two-thirds of college sports that struggle from a financial perspective. When I played at UCF, we started in the MAC, transitioned to Conference USA. It was a financial struggle to the athletic department and to kind of lifting exposure, lifting revenues, all the things that come with that. And people get very focused on the college football playoff and the Big Ten and the SEC, but there's this incredible ecosystem below that changes people's lives, and often in very small communities across the U.S. And so my interest beyond kind of what's happening at the top is where are there opportunities to lift and add value and create unique opportunities from an investment perspective, but from a growth of the overall kind of organism of college sports, like where is that at kind of in the middle market, in addition to what's happening at the top. So I'm going to be paying super close attention to that going into next year and where opportunities are to not only invest, but to kind of lift it up. So, well, listen, I know we went a little bit over time. If you're watching the pod right now, we're actually going to transition into 5 to 7 of our top highlights from our podcast over the last 6 months. So stay tuned for that. Great stuff there. Some of that will be from Marley and some of our incredible guests. Marley here to wrap up 2025. Appreciate the time. Appreciate your leadership, your friendship, and exciting for what 2026 holds.
I'm just happy if we have the video of you crying on the airplane as you receive my Thanksgiving email.
I should have sent a picture of you just to prove it to you.
No, I'm so appreciative of you, humbled by the opportunity that we have, the amazing partners, the amazing amount of interest, and just so thankful. And we continue to say, like, any way that we can be helpful to anyone listening. One, we're super grateful that anyone is listening here, but any way that we can be helpful to you, your family, you professionally, like, please reach out to us. At the end of the day, we are huge in terms of collaboration and giving authentically. And so our amazing partners that we have today and the ones in the future, like, we're just so grateful for you, and we're excited, and we're always here. So thank you.
Awesome. All righty. See everybody in 2026.
All right. Take care.
We've seen with the battery in Atlanta, that's been an incredible project for the Braves. They definitely draw more revenue out of their real estate than they do the baseball team, and that's by design. And we'll be executing a similar strategy with Sporting JAX, which we're partners in, and other assets. But from a professional perspective, do you see yourself as an investor today? Is that a path you want to continue to go down? I know that Momentous is not your first investment. Maybe you can give us a little bit of history of how you've thought about, starting to place some bets as investments in the sports ecosystem and sports space. Do you think that that'll be something that you continue to do? What drew you there initially? And maybe what are some of the investments that you've made with whatever you're willing to share, to kind of frame how you've thought about that so far?
Yeah, kind of started with like my financial background is, non-existent. I got drafted and signed the contract and got money and hired a financial advisor. And it was kind of like, you don't steal anything from me and make sure my credit card works when I swipe it. And that was the extent of my financial acuity. And that has obviously grown and only grown, I think significantly since I got done playing football and have had more time to kind of dive in and learn about things and focus on things. But yeah, I've made investments throughout my career, whether brought to me by financial advisor, right? Here's what we got. This looks like a good idea. Or third party comes to me. I like it. Run it by them. Let's figure this out. A lot of the times, which as post playing career, it's like will always say yes to anybody that wants to have a meeting about a potential investment. Because I think all you can do is learn. So it's a lot of no's. And then you run into a couple that, momentous for me, specifically, and being an example as it's kind of what I've been looking for in the sport adjacent sector world. You're still involved, you're still around, and everything that comes with it is close to the sport, right? It's the stadium, the land just outside the stadium. So it's all in connection. And for me, I've always kind of viewed investments as like a horse jockey situation, right? The horse is the product, the jockey's the people. And it's like, I don't know anything about horses, but I have horse people. Like my job is to go evaluate the jockey, and is it somebody I believe in, somebody I like, somebody I want to get involved with and work with, and spending time having an existing relationship with you, and then getting to meet Marley and spending 3.5 hours with you guys a couple months back at a coffee shop was like, man, I don't know if there's two better guys to go in business with. I think they're incredible, and I think what you have here in Momentous is awesome.
Part of what we're trying to teach people about mental fitness is that there are things that you can do about them. Your physical fitness is a direct result, oftentimes, of obviously genes play a big part in it, but what are you choosing to do with your day? Are you going to bed at a decent hour? Are you waking up and getting a good amount of sleep? That's probably bucket number one. Are you hydrating your body? Are you moving your body? Are you eating good, healthy foods? Are da 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 da. Mental fitness is not different. What kind of content are you consuming? What thoughts are you practicing? Are you creating space and time and energy to unplug and not have constant inbound communication, whether it's podcasting or whatever else there is? We have so much noise coming at us all the time. When are you finding the time to be still? Are you serving others? Are you practicing gratitude? Have you figured out how to use your own breath to deregulate your nervous system, downregulate your nervous system? And so there's lots of things that you can do. And that's what I want when we talk about mental health. I kind of separate the clinical from the everyday. And we are not an organization that can help with the clinical. There's lots of organizations dedicated towards that. But we are an organization committed to educating people that everybody can play a role in this. Even if you feel totally mentally fit all the time, which I would argue none of us ever do, but even if you feel mentally fit the entire time, the reason why you need to know about this and understand this is because eventually it's going to impact you one way or the other, either directly or through someone that you love. The statistics are, that every single one of us knows somebody who's struggling. And so we need to understand this so that we can better help them.
This brings me to the next thought, something that I've learned more from you over time, is earned media value. And, it is a buzzword, but it also is like a real tangible thing. You've been focusing a lot lately, I've noticed, on EMV, both in your newsletters, in our conversations, in the way that you're, building out Athletiverse. What is earned media value in the most simplest form? And how can you help teams, clubs, organizations better understand where they're missing the mark?
But to break it down in layman's terms, what is earned media value? What is owned media value? It's essentially if you go on Instagram today and let's just say we take a picture of you, Kyle, on this podcast, you have a Momentous Sports background. You go put that on your personal channel, it gets 100,000 views. Whatever that value is, that's your owned media value because if Kyle posted it, right? Whoever is the author of the content, that is technically the owned, right? That is the owned media that's being created there.
Got it.
The earned media that's being created is the Momentous Sports logo in the background, getting that exposure for, in this case, quote unquote, for free. Like it's earned, right? They did not have to pay. They have organically showed up in culture. And if you think about social media for a second, and brands are just absolutely, you know, Olympically hijacking us, to say the least, with this, is they are getting their brand, they're getting their logos, they're getting their ideologies to show up organically in the most unassuming places. The most unassuming. I mean, these marketing campaigns are just getting, they're outrageous how well these people are using this to manipulate, and I don't use the word manipulate in a bad way. They just are using it to get the product in front of folks.
What are some of the core things within the business of the club that you're focused on improving kind of here at the beginning?
Everything. We have a mentality of, if you're not getting better every day, you're getting worse, because others are getting better. For us, it's how do we reignite the fan base? How do we get them back in the stadium? How do we get them enjoying being part of the Gallo community, the White Roosters, the Gallos Blancos as we're known? And it's giving them a reason to be optimistic. Was certainly something that we wanted to come out of the gate and communicate and kind of, open ourselves up to them, and not feel like that, we don't take for granted that their support is a sure thing. We have to win their respect and win their trust and admiration. I think, we certainly want to engage. The Querétaro has a big university population, so we want to make sure, even if we're not the first team for some of those young adults, we want them to know that they have a place in our stadium and in our community, to be part of something. And then I think, look, for us, we're just laying the foundation of the team. So one of the things that we want to do is upgrade the fan experience and make it, as a family coming to a match or a supporter coming to a match, we want more amenities. We want to turn a 2-hour experience into a 4 or 5 hour experience. And whether that's tailgating in a parking lot, whether that's music before or after a game, whether that's in game with restaurant options, dining, food and beverage, club level premium opportunities, all of those things are part of what we think will have a positive effect in our city, and especially in League MX. I mean, we talk about, for us, we really have 3 different constituents. We have the people who are, hardcore. They come to every match, rain or shine. You have your people who come to matches, but not frequently. And then you have your people who are fans who support the team who never come. So what we've talked about commercially is, how do we monetize all 3 of those constituents? And it's a different answer, a different solution or set of solutions for each one of those. But if people aren't focused on that, and, even with real estate, I mean, that could be a part of a solution. Where I live in Atlanta, right up the road is where the Braves play, and they built a whole little mini city. And there are a lot of people who go to the Battery when the Braves are playing home games, who don't ever walk into that stadium. They eat at a restaurant. They want that experience. They have kids playing in the green space with the game on the video board.
How did you get from 2U to PAC today?
So Kyle, you mentioned that, things happen by chance. And what's kind of crazy about PAC is, you can argue it happened by chance, but networking is one of the core principles that we teach in the curriculum at PAC. And pro athletes in general think that they're the only ones that find it stressful, and they don't realize everybody finds it stressful. But it's a learned skill. You can get good at it, and if you get good at it, one conversation can change your life. You never know when it's going to happen. You just have to be open to it. And so the crazy thing about PAC is that's how it started. I was in my seats at a Miami Dolphins game. When we IPO'd my company, my wife, Gabby, was like, look, we're not going to change our life in any meaningful way except one thing. We're going to buy these crazy ass seats in the end zone at Hard Rock because you love football so much. And so we did that. They had just remodeled the stadium, and my seats are on the field. I don't tell you this story to talk about my bougie seats. Like, the reality is, this is how PAC starts. The early warm-up period, I am the football lunatic that is in the seats.
Yeah, you're the guy there. Like, you must be there like super early before the game in those seats.
I love it. It's like my happy place. And sitting in my seat right when the warm up starts, and the pregame warm-up period, players can do whatever they want before they put their uniform on, and then they warm up in a position group. And so some players don't even come out of the locker room, but a bunch do. And a player would walk the field every game, and I'm like one of the only people in the stadium, and he would stop and chat with me. And it turned into a real relationship over like 4 or 5 games. I end up inviting him to dinner. He ends up getting really involved in my company. So that's how PAC starts. He introduces me to my co-founder. My co-founder is an amazing person, Caleb Thornhill. Caleb was a Michigan State linebacker, very successful collegiate player. And when he was done playing for Michigan State, he actually got into player development in the NFL, went from the Lions to the Dolphins. And while he was running player development for the Dolphins, he convinced the team to begin investing in the guys in the offseason. So they were running these programs. They were called the Miami Dolphins Business Combine, a play off the NFL Combine. And it was like a week on real estate, a week on startups, a week on investing, whatever might fancy the player, because Caleb was a big believer in the notion of exposure breeding expansion.
So, here we are. I'm investigating New Mexico United. Great team on the pitch, great team operationally, in a place that I'm not all that familiar with and wouldn't put at the top of the board in terms of where I want to be investing, but, got my attention. And so I'm on a plane down to the Cayman Islands for a little conference event. And I'm sitting next to a gentleman that I was introduced to. And he starts telling me about a soccer team that he's investing in and expanding with Tim Tebow in Jacksonville. But more than that, he starts telling me about the vision that he has. And so, like I mentioned before, in New Mexico, I learned about the team and the operations and the P&L and then the real estate. Then you add a multiplier effect like a Tim Tebow and a Ricky Kaplan and some of the folks that are involved in Jacksonville with our investment up there. And you talk about impact. And so then you talk about the impact side. Timmy and Ricky start talking about the ability to intermingle Special Olympics Hall of Fame and thinking about making one of the first, if not the first, special handicap accessible stadiums for folks with special needs. And being incredibly thoughtful about, everything that the Tebow Foundation represents in terms of wanting to do good for humanity and for those that are disadvantaged in a variety of different ways. I'm sure there are some corollaries, but that vision really just exploded my brain. I'm having like a vision from Ratatouille. Again, I've got 3 little kids. Like when he tastes the strawberry and the cheese at the same time, like there's a great visual in that movie about how his brain just unlocks. And that's what happened to me with Jacksonville. And so we're super fortunate and humbled and blessed and excited to be in Jacksonville. There's some amazing news forthcoming. There's already been so much that they've done up there. But that's the prototype. How do we go into communities in the US, Central America, Europe that have incredible demographics, incredible people, have an incredible yearning to have additional professional sports in their community, and don't yet have a place that they can go enjoy the game, have community involvement and engagement, and have that placemaking effort that really catalyzes an entire region. And there's so many opportunities that we found in the last 12 to 24 months, and that's what we're focused on.